Hey everybody, so here we are, coming up to my 100th battle, multiplayer, of my Avatar campaign, and I thought I'd maybe try and do just a little bit of a video of some of the things that I've learned, that I've picked up, that I've been told, that I didn't really know when I first started, and some of the things that might help out if you're completely new to the game and you're just thinking about getting started and some of the I don't want to call it tips, and I just want to, if you think this is going to be a video on how to be awesome on Total War, it's not. I'm still a novice. I'm not in a position to give that kind of advice. There are plenty of people who are, and there's some channel links in the descriptions, and I'd recommend you go and view them if that's what you're looking for. If you're just interested in some of the things that a relatively new player has picked up as they've progressed through their games, then do keep watching. Also, I appreciate a bit of a disclaimer. Nothing in here is like revolutionary or new, but if you're new to the game and you're kind of looking for the insight of a new player as well, then hopefully this video will be of some interest to you. Okay, so at the start of this overview, I guess you'd call it, some things to try maybe before you start even playing the game. Things that are out there that can help is there's quite a lot of downloadable content available for Shogun 2, and whilst spending more money isn't often at the top of most people's to-do lists, the units that you see on there can really help you out. There's some very good units available. The DLCs aren't that expensive, I don't think, but obviously that's a relative thing to say. And you were going to come across the units in the DLC with other people have them, so I would recommend that if you can afford them, maybe check them out before you buy, and then have a think about getting them, because the units you get in there can really help. Mods and tweaks. There are the Shogun 2 Total War forum, or well, it's a Total War forum that has a Shogun 2 section. On there, literally hundreds of mods that people have taken an awful lot of time to make, and some of them are really useful. Two in particular that I think are just invaluable. There's one that enables the camera to zoom out further. So the original camera in Total War is very close up, and you're restricted on how far you can actually zoom out. But if you've watched some videos on YouTube of some people playing, you'll probably see that they've really zoomed out quite far. And if you're not great at glancing at the minimap, then it's really useful to be able to just zoom out and get a big overview picture of everything that's happening. So I would definitely recommend that one. You can also get the same result for that by changing a setting in a preference file, and I'll put how to do that in the description of the video, but one or the other I definitely do. The other mod that I think is really useful is something that improves the unit cards. Because I'm personally not great at looking at the mess of my troops on the field and picking out which ones are which, I tend to use the unit card list at the bottom to identify my troops. And what I've really found is that the ones that colour them make them really easy to just quickly identify on the bar, and to group them and get them, and then to make them to use them. So I find that really useful. So I mean, for me, that's the difference sometimes between getting my spears in the way to stop a charge, a cavalry charge, or actually letting the cavalry get straight in and kill my general. You know, there's very useful to be able to do that. And something else I do now is I colour my veteran units the same colour as the card, so that if I do have to see them on the field, then hopefully it'll get in my head that, for example, purple equals spears, and that's what I've got. But again, it's all optional. The other thing you could do, and something I did that I say help me, obviously I'm by no means any good at this, watching other people play, and there are some really talented people on this game who just understand it to a degree that some people never will. And there are countless people on YouTube who put up some really quality commentary, and they take time to make videos to explain how to do certain things, and it'd be really good for people to take advantage of that, I think. But I will just point out, I'm in no way affiliated with these people or the clans they're in or the work they do. They're purely just people whose content I've come across, really enjoyed watching and benefited from, and I just like to share that so that you can see it and go and have a look. But again, their work's nothing to do with me. So there's just some tips that maybe before you've even really started playing the game, you might want to consider trying out to get you set up and ready to go. Okay, once you've made your tweaks, you've got yourself set up, and you've gone into the game, you started an avatar campaign, and you may have made your general look really fierce, and you're really happy with how he looks, but you're not quite sure how to get into a fight, or how to unlock more units. Well, all of that is done through the campaign map, and that covers land and naval battles. And what you do is your general, or your army as it is, starts in a province, and you have to choose a starting province for your clan. or for your campaign, for your avatar. Now this is really important because each of the provinces on the campaign map represents or unlocks either a piece of armor, a retainer, or a unit type. So if you want to expand the things you've got available, you have to explore the campaign map, and then you have to win a match or a battle in that province to unlock what it has. And that's obviously vital to expanding what you've got available, the quality of the troops you can field, the retainers you have access to. So very important that you get to grips with that. And the reason why it's relevant that you choose a start point that suits your intentions is because you can only move your avatar army one province to a province that connects to provinces you've already conquered. So you have to win a match in a province and go to a province that borders that one. So in order to develop, you have to. It's beneficial perhaps to choose a correct path, and I only say that because I didn't really understand that, and I just picked a random start point, and then when it came to a point when I wanted to unlock a certain unit type, I found that I had to travel halfway across the map and fight countless battles, unlocking things I didn't really want at the time to get the thing I did want. So I just thought that maybe point out that have a good look around before you pick a place and choose the one you want to start at. Okay, so something else you could try is join a clan. That doesn't mean that you have to put a particular tag in your name or fight battles with particular people. All it means is that there are Steam groups associated with Shogun 2, and you can join them for free. And you don't have to do anything as part of it. You just join them, they're public groups, and then what you do is you choose those groups in game through the clan management option, and then you become part of that clan. And it doesn't mean you have. There is like some background clan action that goes on in Shogun 2, but this doesn't force you to do anything as part of that. But what it does mean is it gets you clan tokens when you win or when you participate in a match mode battle, which we'll come to in a sec. But the reason why you want clan tokens is because you can either spend 3 of them to reallocate your general skill points, but it also allows you to unlock the higher tier of veteran upgrades. So for example, with a bow warrior monk, you can unlock some of the basic upgrades, which might be accuracy and morale and stuff like that. But the bits that get really good, where you can unlock like extended range, you need clan tokens to do it. I didn't realise this till quite late on, and if you watch any of my videos, in the first 10 or 15 you'll see me complaining about sometimes not getting clan tokens, and they're only available if you go through match mode. So you get one whether you win or you lose, but it's just something to point out that the sooner you join a clan and do match mode battles, the sooner you get clan tokens, which means the more you'll accumulate and the quicker you can start using them. So it's not anything that's groundbreaking or mandatory, but for me, I found that the sooner I did it, the better, really. So just a couple of things there about planning where you start and perhaps the route you're going to take to unlock the particular units and retainers that are available, and then maybe join a clan to start gathering some clan tokens early on so you can get access to those better quality troops. Okay, so the next part is to talk about your general. Now, he really is your fearless leader. The general, I don't think I can emphasize this enough. Your general is so important in Shogun 2. His existence, the fact that he lives on the battlefield, makes your army do much better. And if you watch any of the videos, you will see that in a lot of them, as soon as the general dies, the other troops just start wavering and then break. And it can sometimes be instantaneous, depends on the quality of the troops. But using your general effectively is just absolutely paramount in these battles. So there are different types of general that you can build. You can mix and match between these 3, but generally the common 3 trees are: you have a leadership general who directly contributes very little to the battle, but buffs all the troops around him, so it can be very, very beneficial. There's a bow general who, again, doesn't really get into melee, but tends to hang back and damage and take units out from afar, and they can be absolutely punishing if they're used properly. And finally, a melee general who is basically just loves to get stuck into the fight, and again, they're kind of like having a very, very elite cavalry unit on the field, and they can do some serious damage. So they're the common 3 types of general that you'll encounter. I'm not going to advise you on which one you should pick, it's entirely down to your playstyle. The one thing that I really will just advise or suggest is that whatever army you take, make sure it suits the kind of general that you've got. So, for example, if you take a leadership general, make sure you don't need to use him as a cavalry unit, because if he dies, low morale units will break. If you take a bow gen, try and make maximum effect of him, so generally having a lot of other skirmish units, perhaps bow cav or anything like that, could be useful. And again, melee, you've got an elite unit of cavalry, but again, just beware with the second 2 types of general, bow and melee, the morale boost for your troops is more important almost. Okay, and the other thing is that morale really matters on this game, really matters. You can win games by breaking units rather than killing them all. So if you run up against an elite unit, even if you've got a really rubbish unit in front of it, if you have another really rubbish unit at the side and at the back of it, it will rout and you will win. You don't have to kill them all. Units with high morale stick around longer. The longer they stick around, the better they do. And the reason why that's important is because if you take a bow or a melee general, then the morale of your troops won't be buffed by default. His presence, his being near them, will make them better, but they'll have a smaller radius, and that means that it's difficult to keep them buffing your troops. With a leadership general, you get a direct buff to unit morale, which means you can, when you upgrade your veterans, you can focus on things like attack and defense, which can make them more cost effective because you don't have to spend as many points to get the maximum benefit from them. So it does mean that you don't have an elite bow or cavalry unit to use. So it's swings and roundabouts really. It's entirely up to you. So that's really all I want to say about the general, but try and pick a path you want to go down, and then just remember that when you take it to battle, because I've had a couple of fights whereby the army that a person's brought has not in any way complemented their general. They've effectively lost their general very early on, thrown it away, and then their unit breaks, or they rage quit, and it's an easy win. So just bear that in mind, I guess, because that's something that I think in previous Total War games, if you've ever played them on multiplayer, the general was perhaps less important, or has less flexibility. So that's just something to bear in mind when you're picking your general, leveling him up, and building your troops around him. Okay, so picking a fight, and what we're talking about this is how you actually play other players. I didn't realise the difference in what I'm about to talk about when I first started playing, which is why I'm going to mention it now. When you try and get into a battle, you can do it in one of two ways. Firstly, you can use something called Battle List. Now what this does is this allows you to either set up your own game, where you can determine the funds available and the map, and wait for people to join, or you can see a list of other people's games that they've set up, and you can also see the level of the general you're going to be playing against, which can give you an idea as to kind of the challenge you're going to have. The other kind is match mode, and what this does is this just randomly assigns you an opponent who I think is in the same region or province on the campaign map. That could be wrong. And not the danger, but the thing with that is that you can, if you're quite new, you can all of a sudden get thrown into higher funds matches. And when you've got no veterans, you'll find it difficult to spend 14,000 koku on a decent army. You'll just spam vanilla units, and you'll come up against some heavily vetted units, and you'll probably lose. Not that I think there's an issue with losing, and I think you should still enjoy that experience and learn what you can from this more advanced or more experienced player. But when you're first starting, you might want to just maybe not go down that route. About match mode is that you can also use it to get involved in team battles. So all you do is when you're searching for a game, just don't untick the box that says join other games or something like that, and it will throw you into 2v2, 3v3, and that can be quite fun. So the thing I've put at the bottom where it says start small, what I mean by that is when I first started playing, I stuck to Battle List. What this allowed me to do was to set up a series of small funds battles, which meant that firstly I had a choice of kind of the game it was going to be, which made me feel a bit more comfortable. And it allowed me to spend a bit of time developing a set of troops that I wanted to develop into veteran. So something I'd advise you to do, or suggest you do, is let's say you think, well actually I want to go quite sword heavy in a lot of these games. Pick a few katana samurai and try and use them and get them into veterancy and spend a few points in them, and then once you get some more expensive units you can start doing the larger funds battles. But my advice, and purely my opinion for what that's worth, is start with smaller battles because it'll help balance the playing field. If you go up against a very high level player with very experienced units, you're more likely to lose, because as you'll see if you watch any of the videos I've linked to in the description for any of the players I mentioned earlier, you'll see that this game is very heavily about quality units or veteran units. Getting a cost effective choice allows you to field a very strong army, and when you first start out you don't always have that option. You kind of get what you're given, either what the DLC gives you or what the base vanilla install gives you. So you have to be, I'm not saying be scared of losing or stack it in your favour or anything like that, not at all. I just mean for the very first few battles it can be useful to get used to some of the maps, to get used to the micro, the interface, and the difference between playing against the AI and a person. Because if you've only ever done single player, I mean obviously you'll know that it's not the same, but you can't really win with 6 Yari Ashigaru and 6 Bo Ashigaru and a general that goes into stand and fight. You won't win if they're all vanilla. So just something to bear in mind. Small matches on Battle List for the first few, just to get you used to it. I think I'd recommend that, but that's again just my recommendation. Okay, so we've done all the things we've talked about so far. We're about to build an army, we've got a general we're happy with, and so something just to talk about is veteran units. Now, veteran units are just absolutely vital in this game. You'd be very wise to pick some veterans early on, and or some types of units you want to develop into veterans, and to try and use them and get some points spent in them, because they are just mammothly important and useful, and some of the abilities you can unlock just will be what win you games, quite frankly. Try and do that. Try and develop some veterans, and try and, I mean, maybe build an army around some of your veteran units, if that's what it takes. Just bear them in mind. Try and develop some. What happens is, I was worried about this. If your veteran unit dies, it doesn't matter. After a battle, any casualties your veterans have sustained will carry on into the next battle. So, for example, if you take a katana samurai that gets down to 50% of your men, when you come to build your army for the next battle, it will still have 50% men. The battle after that, it will be at 100% if you don't fight it. So rest it a game, and it'll be back up to 100%. If they get entirely wiped out, you don't lose them. They don't take longer to recover. They just take more casualties in that game. That's all. For unit selection, something, now this is again entirely down to you because it's how you want to play the game, but in my experience, a balanced approach has really helped me out because it allows me to be flexible, to be versatile, and to tackle most of the things I've come across. When I've come across opponents who have had a very imbalanced army, so people who bring entirely cavalry troops, for example. I think I've only lost one battle where someone's gone very cavalry heavy, and that's because they had significantly better level troops. They had some really quality veterans, and I didn't. I went for quantity of troops, and they brought quality, and I lost. So something I've learned from that is to try and bring a balance. So I always try to bring some kind of ranged component, but not just for its own sake. A ranged component that will make a difference. So either a good ranged bow, like a bow monk or a daikyu samurai, and I always try and bring some matchlocks if I can afford them, because the impact they have is just, you cannot overlook how useful they can be. If you can get them on the flanks, if you can get them working, they will just, they do a lot of damage, and the morale penalty that the opponent suffers is worth it, even if just for that. So a range component that adds something. It's not just bow ashigaru for its own sake. It's something that will make a difference. Spears, I would always recommend spears. You will almost never come across somebody who brings no cavalry. They might come light on cavalry, but then again, if you don't have spears, they can really still hurt you. And spears, although they're not as effective against swords in melee, they can still hold, and they can still buffer, and they can still be meat shields if they need to. But bringing at least some spears is very, very wise. And again, swords are kind of the primary melee damager in this game. Swords and monk warriors, I expect. Do try and bring some. And cavalry, again, cavalry is very important for getting around the flanks. Even I tend to use my cavalry just to try and mitigate other opponent cavalry. And a couple of units of cav supported by some spears can tackle most things. So again, it's worth bearing that in mind. And again, a whole approach that supports your general is a very important thing as well. And again, if you watch any of the videos, not necessarily mine, but the others I've linked to, you'll see that a good balance or a very specific strategy that uses a very finite type of unit is the alternative, but just be prepared that that might not always work out for you. Rushing lone swords at your opponent might not be as effective as it seems when you first start. And retainers that fit. You'll unlock various retainers as you play the game. Basically, you get up to a maximum of 5 retainers, and I think you unlock one every 2 levels that your general raises, or every 2 ranks. And these retainers do various things. Some of them will improve your troops' attack, your troops' defense. They may make opponent troops weaker. They may allow you to unlock particular abilities or units, and they can be very, very useful. But the thing that's very important is sometimes I forget about my retainers. If I'm rushing into a battle, I sometimes forget them. But just bear in mind that the benefits they can give can be huge, so try and balance your army and your general all with the retainers that you're getting. And finally, the thing, value for money. Now, I've put this in there because veteran units can get very expensive. So it's nice to try, and just because a unit has a point to spend doesn't mean you have to spend it. Try and get a mix of, so for example, if you're leveling up your katana samurai, try and get some that have got good defense, some that have got very good attack, some that have got a decent attack. You know, try and balance them out so you can pick and choose them as you fight different battles. Because as I said earlier, one set choice of units will never always work. You always come up against an army composition that will beat you, and with the best will in the world, you are going to lose some battles. So, but the other thing with value for money is hero units. Something I see people do a lot is they bring hero units, and now from my experience they're never that useful. they have to be used in a particular way, and it's a way that I don't know, and a way that I haven't seen anybody use. But whenever I've seen them, generally they haven't done that much damage. And when you consider that if you're on a medium battle, which is 10,000 koku, a katana samurai, which is 30 katanas, costs you nearly 1,500 koku, which is a lot of your funds. That's 2 units of vanilla cavalry, or a very leveled up bow monk, so just be careful when you bring them. If you're going to bring them, have a strategy to use them, because they won't just win by themselves because they've got hero in the name. Okay, so again, a value for money build. There isn't really a perfect balance between quality and quantity. Sometimes one's better than the other, sometimes a balance works. It all depends on what you come up against and how you use it, as all things in this game do. But just something to bear in mind. Okay, so I just wanted to put this in, and it kind of pains me a little bit that I feel like I need to put this in. But anyway, I want to talk about etiquette of playing. I've met a mix of people whilst I've been playing. Some of them have been really nice. Some of them, I mean, no one's been directly hostile, but they've done fairly disrespectful and quite frankly prickish things that I'd try like to help people to avoid. So firstly, when you first join a game, say hello. I mean, it's a person on the other end of it. Be nice. I mean, you're not asking for their life story, but just interact a little bit. Wish them luck. You're both there to have a good game, to have some fun. Just be nice about it. The other thing that really gets to me is people. There are two points in this in lining up a battle when you have to say I'm ready to play, and that's when you've built your army, and then when you've before you start the match, and then before the game starts when you've deployed your army. And at both of those points, you have to tick ready. Now, when you tick ready, it gives the other person 60 seconds to finish what they're doing. Now, if you've got an army set up for medium funds, and you go into a match-made battle and it ends up being on large funds, you may have to significantly change what you've built, or maybe on a map you didn't expect. So if you get there and the other person just immediately hits ready, it gives you 60 seconds to fix your build, which isn't something I can really do because I don't understand stuff well enough. So it really annoys me when people do that. So why not just say, I'm ready if you are, ready when you are, anything, just something like that to indicate to the other person that you finished what you're doing, you're ready to go. And then when they go ready, you go ready, and the world moves on. Equally, when you're lining up your troops, you may have a build that takes no time at all to line up, or you may just be shit hot at lining it up quickly. But the other person might not be. So, again, it's kind of sporting to just say, I'm ready if you are. And at that point, it's also quite nice to say good luck again. One thing that is really annoying is don't quit. If you're losing, don't quit. Firstly, because it's massively disrespectful. Secondly, because it makes you a twat. Thirdly, because if anybody's recording, you'll get your name smeared all over YouTube. Lastly, because actually your troops will fare better by standing and fighting it out. They'll get more kills and more experience by fighting to the end. So, just because your precious Bogen died at the start because you didn't defend him properly, doesn't give you license to quit. Quite frankly, it also stops the other person getting the kills and experience that they deserve by having beat you. So, be fair and let them do it. And at the end of the match, say good game. You've had fun, say good game. You don't, it's not about being an arsehole, really. It's about having fun. And the other thing is, you're talking to some people, you might learn from them. They might offer to play you again. You might become friends. In the 90 odd games I've played, I've met a couple of people who I've added on Steam. We talk, we play a Shogun every now and again, and it's good fun. It's nice. It's kind of like a sense of community. So, I mean, I don't know how people feel about this one. This is very much a personal thing for me, but I find people who don't do these things very, very frustrating indeed. I hope you aren't one of them. You know who you are. Okay, so in the heat of the moment, this is what we've been waiting for. We've made a general. We've gone on the campaign map. We've set up an army that complements each other. We're ready. We're just raring to go. We've gone through match mode. We've found a general who we like. We spoke to him. We want to fight them. But it's really easy to get lost in what's going on. And as daft as it seems, I was actually quite nervous when I first started playing online because I'd watched all these videos on YouTube of all these amazing battles and thought, oh, I want to do that. But actually, I wasn't ready to do that. I didn't have the troops, I didn't have the mic. I mean, I still don't, largely. Just bear this in mind. Some of the things that might help you. When you're lining up your troops, if you've got some trees nearby, hide some cavalry in them. Try and keep your units hidden. It can give you an advantage midway through the game. Or you may have to rush your unit straight out and they don't do any advantage at all, but still it gives you that option. Secondly, well, related to that, I guess, is spotting other units. The person you're playing against will try and do the same thing, so keep your eyes peeled for things popping up in the middle of the battle. And again, you can do that either by using the mini-map, or you can do that by zooming right out and having a look. But also, the guy will say hidden units or something like that. I don't know why he's not German, but anyway. So bear that in mind as well. Just listen out for that. Another way of determining if your opponent has something hidden is to try and do a quick little bit of adding up of the Koku amount of the units you can see. So, for example, if you're on a small funds battle and they're using, and they've got 4 or 5 1,000 Koku units and the limit is 5,000 Koku, they haven't got anything hidden. If you can only see 3,000 Koku's worth of stuff, then you know that they've got something hidden, and it just maybe plants that seed in your mind that there might be something popping out of some trees nearby, and it makes you be that little bit more careful, stops you overcommitting, and keeps you a little bit more balanced. So, something that might help. Flanking. Now, what you will see with the really, really quality players in this game, what they do is they spread their troops out and they flank around and they envelop your units. And they, like I said earlier, a quality troop can be overwhelmed by less quality troops if there's more of them. That's what people will do. They will look to get cavalry in behind you, they will look to get matchlocks firing in your side. And so it's really important that you try, without spreading your line too thin, you have to find a balance between keeping your line thick enough to hold, but wide enough to get around and start taking advantages. Because if, again, like I said, morale is very important. If you look at a unit of Katana Samurai, if it has a status concerned, flanks not secure or being attacked from behind, anything like that, it will severely impact on their morale and it will make them more likely to break. And when it comes to those good quality units, you are much more likely to win by hitting them on 2 or 3 sides than you are to just meat shield and charging up to them and going into this big grinder in the middle, where if they've got better quality infantry, they'll chew you up and spit you out. Key buildings. Now, maps will have key buildings that will give you a buff to a particular statistic. So, for example, the shrine gives you a bonus to morale. Whenever you see these key buildings, there's two kind of things to bear in mind. One of them is to try and capture the ones that are really relevant to you and to your army. So if you brought a lot of swords, and there's a sword dojo, you probably want to take it. But equally, the other thing is, if you've not brought many bows, but there's a bow dojo, or an archery dojo, the thing to consider is that maybe your opponent will need that. So it's not just about capturing the ones that you need, it's about potentially contesting or preventing the opponent from getting the ones that he might need, or she might need. So just something to bear in mind. Sometimes some cheap units or some cavalry hidden in some woods nearby can just help stop them getting that bonus, disrupt the rhythm, slow them down, and give you an edge while you capture your dojo and then move up to engage. Okay, the other thing on this about in the heat of the moment is it's easy to lose track of your general. And as we said earlier, he is the big dog of the battlefield, and you really must love thy gen. You really must. And two common things that will happen is people will try and snipe him with archers or with matchlocks, or they will try and rush him with cav or with swords. So it's really important that where possible you support your general. You must, particularly if you have a leadership general that you pop in to stand and fight, it will mean that he is just 20-30 men standing alone in a square, and if you do not have units round him, he will get killed and you will suffer for it. So you really, really have to try and look after him. If you look at some of my videos, I've won countless of those victories by getting in early and killing the opponent's general. And the reason why I raise it, I'm not suggesting you do general snipe or try and assassinate their general, but it's hugely advantageous. Potentially, if they haven't looked after, their troops properly, then it can have little to no cost to you, and it can be just, yes, it's very wise to do. But the main point to raise here is that people will try and do it to you as well. Particularly people, if they've got 200 range archers and they're close enough to your lines, they will try and hit your general. So just be careful for that one, because if your general dies, unless you've already winning heavily, you're not long for this world, quite frankly. So in the second part, in the heat of the moment, some other things to consider whilst you're in battle. Firstly, units can be put into loose or tight formation. And the main reason you would do this is if a unit is loose, it's spread out and it's less likely to take damage from archer or matchlock fire and from cavalry charges. So if you have a unit that you know is going to be under those kinds of attacks, put it into loose and it will add to their survivability. So if you have a bow unit and you're in a skirmish fight with an enemy bow unit, put your archers in loose, they'll get slightly fewer kills, but it will make them last much, much, much longer. And something I've seen is that a lot of people leave units in tight formation even when they're being shot at, which isn't always the smartest thing to do. Once your bows have finished being shot at, put them back into tight. Once you've got the ranged advantage, put them back into tight, and then you can get more kills without the fear of your units being shot to death. And target your ranged units, and what I mean by that is that ranged units in this game have an auto fire or fire at will option that you can toggle on and off. Now what smart players will do is they will put inexpensive meat shield units into the range of your ranged units first, so that your archers and your matchlocks will automatically start firing at them, which means that it allows their better units, the ones they actually need, to get to you unscathed. So just be mindful of what your ranged units are shooting at, particularly useful if you're in a skirmish fight at the start and you've got a really expensive bow unit, something unarmoured like a bow monk, and you're up against a samurai, a bow samurai that's obviously got much more armour. If they've stuck a Yari Ashikaru in front of their unit and you're shooting that and the bows are shooting you, you're going to come out really badly from that little exchange in terms of the ranged component of your army, particularly if you've left your units in tight formation. Also, as the battle goes on, and once your bow units finish shooting at whatever they were shooting at, and when they switch targets, they don't prioritise, they'll just hit the next thing in range. So you could find that your really good bows are wasting a lot of time shooting at some very well armoured troops, when actually they should be targeting your opponent's matchlocks or your opponent's bows, or your squidgy, soft, unarmoured targets that your units might have, that your opponent might have. The flip side of that is that if you've told your bow to target a particular unit, you have to be mindful that if that target routes and starts running away, your bows will follow it. So what you may find is that halfway through the battle your bows might be on your melee front line or charging single-handedly towards your opponent, and you have to be very careful to stop that happening. And something else about ranged units, fire arrows and whistling arrows. Now what the advice that a lot of other people say is that whistling arrows are too expensive to use as an upgrade on any other kinds of bows apart from really a foot samurai troop. And I tend to agree with that. I think it's an extra 70 or 120 koku to put on a bow unit, which is a big increase. So I'd stick to that advice I got from somebody else, which is if you want whistling arrows, put it on a foot samurai and take one of those units. And fire arrows are great for lowering morale, so if you want to finish off a low morale unit, do that. Or they're very good for doing more damage to armoured troops, but don't just use them because you have the ability. Try and use it strategically and at a point when you need it. Now check unit stats. What this means is that in the options under the battle interface you can change a setting so that it will always show you the statistics of the units when you hover over them. And what this allows you to do is this allows you to see the statistics of your opponent's units, which is vitally important. One, obviously, because the katana samurai that's coming towards you might not be vanilla, it might actually be an absolute monster unit that's going to rip up your entire army if you don't handle it differently. It allows you to see the range on his bows and whether his general has a bow, and on his matchlocks, which means that you can position yourself better. And equally with the cavalry, you can see what statistics they've upgraded, which gives you an insight into perhaps how they're going to use them. So, for example, if they've upgraded all their cavalry to have a very high charge, chances are they're just going to smash into your units and run away and do that again and again and again. So you know you need to pin them down or nullify that charge. If they just have like high attack and defense, chances are they're just going to run in and leave it there. So you want to position your units that don't fight cavalry away from that area where they're coming from. And finally, be mindful of terrain. And the reason why I've said this is because it's something that I don't do. I never do. So things like charging uphill will tire out your troops, will make them less effective, will give the opponent the advantage, mainly because they can charge downhill and get a bonus to their charge. You'll also find that if you put matchlocks, if you line up your matchlocks and there's a bump in the ground, they won't be able to fire over the bump, obviously, so it will render some or all of that matchlock unit useless. So when you're positioning your force, try and find a line of sight that allows your ranged component to keep going, or an approach that allows your melee component to not get ripped apart because you've given the opponent the advantage unwittingly. Also, equally, trees. Trees are very good cover if you want to fire out of them. If you're firing through them, it will block your arrows and your matchlock. Cavalry's less effective in trees in the charge, so if you know you're going to take a big cavalry charge, hide in some trees. Also, artillery, fire rockets don't work out of tree units, so if you see an opponent, what I should say by that is that their projectiles will get hit the trees, and you'll take much less casualties than you would otherwise. So just be mindful of where the opponent lines up. Okay, so I think that was everything I wanted to say for kind of in the heat of the moment. So that's again just a bit of a collection of the things that I found useful or that I do to try and get the best use out of my units, or more importantly, that I see a lot of people not doing, and I've got the advantage over them because they haven't done it. Particularly the two about the bows. So just bear that in mind if you want to. Again, it's all purely my opinion, so feel free to dismiss it all, but just some things that when getting started you might not necessarily be aware of, and it can give you an edge when you're fighting. Okay, so that's a sort of a summation of all the things that I've learned as I've been playing and some of my experiences. I realise that there's nothing really new in there, or exciting, or different, and it's not going to be a guide to make you win every single Total War battle that you'll ever fight. But I just hope that it helps some people maybe pick up one or two things that they maybe didn't know before, or that they think maybe they could implement or avoid doing if it's one of the negative things, that just might help people out along the way. Again, this video really is just aimed at really new players who aren't sure how to find their feet in multiplayer, or they might be losing and not be sure why. Things like that really, so it's nothing strategically new, but I hope it was of some use to some people. So the last thing just to bear in mind really then, a really important thing to bear in mind I guess, is you've got an army that you've taken, and the same strategy may not always work. So if you usually rush, sometimes you won't be able to. If you always defend, sometimes you won't be able to. You'll have to mix it up and change it up, and that's a good thing in a way because it keeps it fresh and interesting. But there is always a counter to what your opponent brings, and it might just be a case of being patient, or it might be a case of being reckless. I don't know, but just bear that in mind. Stick with it. Have fun. Don't quit. And if anybody would want to have a game against me or anything, then please just drop me a message on here. We can add each other on Steam and have a quick game, and it should be good fun. So, also just remember, I am very much a novice. This is not me claiming to be an absolute god on Total War. I am a novice. These are just things I've learned in my first 90 or so multiplayer battles that I thought I'd share. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.